Texas Tech beat the number one team in the country last week, but then they lost to Arizona State and may have lost the best player in the Big 12 for the rest of the year. This is the Locked On Big 12, Locked On Texas Tech crossover.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Texas Tech crossover. I'm Drake Toll from America's number one Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. And if you're not, you're probably listening to Locked On Texas Tech and Chris Level, who joins today. We start with JT Toppin. The outlook for Texas Tech, given what news may come down the pipeline, whether positive or negative. And then we'll go with just the weirdest road trip ever. Level set off the air might be the weirdest he's ever experienced at Texas Tech, with a win over number one Arizona, a loss to Arizona State, and losing your best player for possibly extended time. Then nobody does it better. Did Tech's NIL pay off in the transfer portal this football offseason? If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. Chris, at the time of recording, 12:30 Eastern time on Wednesday. But as of now, is Texas Tech without JT Toppin? What's the latest update?
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously with my radio duties, I talked to Grant after the game, and he did not know anything at that point. He met with the media and felt like they would get back to Lubbock, which was yesterday, and they would kind of take a look. You know, is the replay is weird. It happened right in front of us at that end of the floor, and it wasn't like one of those non-contact. It looks like he bangs knees with Masamba Diop of Arizona State, and you know he went down, and clearly something didn't feel right, and everybody is sitting still, because if you ask the trainer to come over, you've got to, at that point, you have to come out of the game. And I think there was 6 minutes left to go in the game. And I think that he realized, okay, trainer needs to come over here. And then he was helped to the locker room. Grant mentioned after the game that he kind of felt reach for the back of his knee. It doesn't look like your normal, like, because your worst fear is like, you know, ACL and all those kinds of things, and it didn't look like what a normal ACL injury would look like when you watch the what video you have. But I don't know. Obviously, I think you have to be prepared for short term, long term. You know, and you know, obviously he's a great kid, and he's a heck of a player that does so much for Texas Tech. He's one of the top scorers and rebounders in the country. And he just got in transition, just kind of in a weird spot. And it's just like we all just came off of watching Richie Saunders, you know, get taken off the floor. So has he played his last game for Texas Tech? Is he going to be back in a week or two? Great question. Or is this something that would put him back in a Texas Tech uniform next year, as odd as that sounds? I mean, it's all on the table. So I think we're still all trying to process and kind of wait to see kind of what the ramifications are. But it certainly was not a good night in the desert after you come off of, you know, an unbelievable night in the first game of the two-game Arizona swing.
So, Level, and by the time this releases, we may know more information on JT Toppin. Let's say it is worst case scenario, and any given injury, he's out for the rest of the season in March Madness. What does that mean for Grant McCasland and Texas Tech's national championship hopes?
Well, I mean, your ceiling is drastically lower at that point. At this point, you're just kind of, we've got good players, but he's just such a heavy usage player in the pick and roll with Christian Anderson, and you would have to reinvent yourself on the fly, and that would be a bit tricky. You shoot a lot of threes, but he opens up a lot of those threes and opens up the floor in most cases because of his ability to score, and teams having to make decisions when they double. You know, if they try to guard him one-on-one, he scores more often than not, and when they double, that's where the three-point shots come from. So you'd have to reinvent yourself, but I mean, it's pretty clear that he's probably going to miss some time. We just don't know what that looks like. And if he's out for the remainder of the season, then you go from, because I mean, prior to the Arizona State game, you're still in the Big 12 title hunt. You're one game back after what Iowa State did to Houston. And you were, prior to that, you were the only team that had beaten Houston in the last 2 years. And so, I mean, that's all the thoughts start running through your head. Like you start wondering about the right now, the future, and all that stuff. But it just, injuries suck, man. That's the worst because for fans, for obviously teammates and coaches and just, whatever. But it hurts the league too, when guys like Richie Saunders and JT Toppin go down for whatever extent that is. And obviously Richie's is for the season, but you just hope that's not the case with JT. But it would lower their ceiling, I would think, quite a bit nationally, and limit what they could do in the NCAA tournament. And heck, you just don't know what the rest of the regular season looks like. I mean, I think you're firmly in the tournament right now, but you just don't know, what this looks like. You take arguably your best player off your team, and you're just not near the threat as that you once were.
If Toppin is back, what can Texas Tech feel? What should the expectation be set at? That if we don't go Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, it's a disappointment? Where do you set it if JT Toppin's healthy?
Like, are you saying like if he had not gotten hurt, what would
I'm saying if we find out in 48 hours that he's back and ready to go, and the Texas Tech's March Madness tournament, that the tournament looks the same for Tech?
Oh, well, and depending on what level he's back at, or what that process looks like, for sure. What percentage he's at, all those things. But if he's back and close to normal, this is a team with the right draw. They could have made it to the Final Four. I mean, I just think that you look at it's kind of one of those things where I know what you're capable of, but I also know what you're capable of, because the UCF and the Arizona State losses are head scratching. Those come off of big wins over Houston and Arizona. So you lose those games right immediately after that. And obviously getting to the Final Four requires you to win 4 in a row. But they can compete with anybody in the country when he's healthy and rolling. But at what level does he back? And I mean, I would take that in a heartbeat. If you tell me he's going to suit up again this year and he's any close to the level, I mean, I think you take that and run right now, for fear of what the alternative may be, and that it's his season is over. So we don't know, but they're a handful when he's out there again, because I think Duke, Arizona, and Houston are handfuls, and you beat them all. One on the road, one on a neutral floor, one on your own floor. So it just weird night, man, in Tempe. And I remember being in Tempe. It was the only regular season football game that you lost last year. But Arizona State kind of got your number there in these two sports at their place.
No doubt. Let's talk about how weird that road trip was when we come back. Locked on Big 12, Locked on Texas Tech.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. It was a heavyweight showdown between number 3 South Carolina and number 7 LSU, and the Gamecocks rose to the occasion. South Carolina secured a hard-fought 79-72 victory to stay atop the SEC standings, using a balanced offensive attack to outlast the Tigers. Tessa Johnson led the way with 21 points, while Raven Johnson added 19. Medina Okot dominated the paint with a double-double, finishing with 12 points and 17 rebounds, while Joyce Edwards chipped in 10 points to round out the scoring. With the statement win, the Gamecocks now turn their attention to a road matchup at number 23 Alabama on Thursday. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech joins Locked On Big 12. Hey, if you're a big fan of either of these shows, a first listener, it's your first listen every single day. Join the Everydayer Club, lockedonbig12.supercast.com, lockedontexastech.supercast.com. Ad-free podcasts every single day from these two shows. Level, I'll keep it 30,000 foot here. Take me on the road. You were there for both the Arizona win, the Arizona State loss. Let's start day one. You get on the plane, you head out there. That full timeline had to be nuts.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this road trip and you go, okay, on paper, you gotta split them at least. And Arizona was coming off of a loss, so you're like, okay, this may be really bad timing playing these guys. They had not lost a game. All of a sudden, they go to Kansas and lose a close one, and they're sitting around and they're waiting on you. And it's a Saturday afternoon game. It's much harder, I think, to win games on the road on Saturdays in this league than it is on a weeknight when you can maybe sneak up on somebody. But the McHale Center is awesome. It's one of the toughest environments in the league and certainly in the country. And then you just kind of find your way into a bit of a fight, and you hung in there. And the aforementioned JT Toppin and Christian Anderson were doing their thing. You have a role player like Leon Horner who had barely played most of the year, and he comes in and plays 26 minutes, scores 5 points, and he's just like an offensive rebounding fool at the end of that game to allow you to hold on and win it. You had a chance to win it in regulation, and it's just sports are funny sometimes, man, because that's not one that I was expecting at all, and you pull it off after they were, I said the same thing after, you went to Madison Square Garden back in December and you're down 17 to Duke, and you somehow pull off a minor miracle, which it made no sense. This one was just not, it's like Arizona hadn't lost a game and all of a sudden you're going to expect them to lose 2 in a row. Just, I don't know if we're envisioning that happening, but yet this is what happened. And it's just like you kind of shocked the sport a bit on a Saturday, and then you're just riding high. And then we were obviously stayed in Arizona and drove over to Tempe after a brief delay, which you may ask about that too. We drove over to Tempe on Sunday, but yeah, that's how the road trip started. But and the Big 12 is doing this to where they'll put these trips in to where, you go play TCU and Baylor. Last year Texas Tech played Utah and BYU, or you may go play Cincinnati and West Virginia, and you kind of you couple them up and to save on some travel and to kind of make it easier on everybody. So you take 2 flights instead of 4. But that's this trip for Texas Tech, and just to go from that to like high, low, weird, man. Because you got the split on the road trip that you kind of would thought that maybe at minimum you would get or that you needed, and it just was complete opposite of the way that you thought it would play out.
You mentioned a bit of a delay getting from Tucson to Tempe. The USA Today was the first reputable source to cite to source the tire slashing in Tucson. What do you know? What do we know concrete? And has there been any response from Texas Tech, the Big 12?
I think Texas Tech confirmed that this has happened. There's a video of it, which is kind of what that the video got out. What little I know is what I can tell you is that I believe some Arizona fan, I'm going to gather,
Sure.
Snapchatted this, and somebody saw it, and a Tech fan or just an observer, like video the Snapchat video. So it's like a screen share of a video. Anyway, that's what kind of went everywhere. And I didn't know anything about it. And we were sitting there in the hotel on Sunday morning, and, word started spreading, and I had been sent this video, and they were like, yeah, I think somebody slashed their tire. I was like, well, that makes sense right here, because here's the video of it. And then it just kind of, it just went nuts. And everybody's like, is this AI? Is this fake? No, I don't believe it was fake at all. And I think the word was that they may have caught the guy or person that was responsible, I think, but I don't have any details there. But sports, man. And like, if you see on the video, you'll see a big double T on the bus where you're like thinking, hey, you're kind of asking for it, aren't you? Well, this was a unique situation where, because you were on this 5-day trip, you coaches sometimes get very familiar with their bus driver or whatever. And this was in close enough in proximity. We're like, hey, I guess send the bus out, and that way we can have the same driver and the same bus for this whole deal. We're going to be on this bus for many days. So normally you wouldn't have had one of your own buses on the road with you, but it just so happened that this was one, and I guess the Arizona fans or somebody had been overserved. And I would say, after watching that video, if you're sticking a knife in the middle of a bus tire, that would make me a bit nervous. I don't know. I would guess there's thousands of pounds of pressure built up in these massive tires. It would have, I would have given a bit of pause there before I would have done something similar. Like, I don't know if that's the smartest thing to do, but anyway, I guess now we know. But it got fixed, and we were on our way with a minor delay, and it's just one of those things that I guess makes the Big 12 fun, makes it kind of crazy. I don't know, but yeah, that was a new one for me.
If you're going to TP someone's house or slash a tire, don't film yourself. That's rule number one. Just don't. It's a bad idea. Surprised so far. I know a lot of Tech fans have echoed the sentiment that the Big 12 has not responded to that. It's weird. You would usually hear the league say something, finding the school or not condoning the tire slashing, but surely a statement will come out. Level, before we move on to NIL, transfer portal, the offseason in football, give me you're around the locker room and around the team. What is the dichotomy between a Sunday after beating the number one team in the country and then a Wednesday after you lose to Arizona State?
Well, I mean, typically on a Sunday I think in most cases, unless you're playing on a Monday night, it's kind of an off day, kind of a quiet one. They took us, Grant McCaslin mentioned this in some of the things he did prior to the Arizona State game. He's like, hey, we took the fellas over to the Suns practice facility. Just kind of let them, shoot around a little bit, just kind of get off their feet or get on their feet a little bit, but just let them shoot around in the gym and all that. But you're tired, emotionally spent, and you just kind of decompress on a day like that. Obviously, I'd be willing to bet that, on a Wednesday, I think that they're probably trying to figure out, obviously, about JT, and then if that news isn't what you had hoped, then the reinvent process or how are we gonna alter the course here? What are we gonna do here? Who starts? How do we play? And all those things. But it's just, and you always hear that, like, how do you handle a big win emotionally? And the pats on the back and all that, but you weren't back on campus. You weren't around any of your support systems. You were just on the road with your own team and in the state of Arizona. And so I don't know, but yeah, this road trip was just absolutely bizarre. Just because it literally, you couldn't feel any better after one, and in a way feel any worse after the other one. It's just like opposite ends of the spectrum. And like, I couldn't have envisioned that scenario in any way prior to going to Tucson for the first game, like that you would have the opposite ends of the spectrums, when you're coming off a road trip. But that's kind of what we just went through.
Yeah. Level, let's go to the gridiron and talk Texas Tech's offseason, NIL, and transfer portal right here on Locked On Big 12, Locked On Texas Tech. Hey, yo, today's show is brought to you by TurboTax. It's the perfect time of year for TurboTax to do your work for you. I don't love doing taxes. That's why I go to TurboTax. They make it super easy. It doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. For a limited time, You can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Today's show is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy keeps me going. Look, dude, I host a morning show now. I'm up at like 5 a.m. and then I'm up until 11 p.m., midnight, watching Big 12 basketball. That's where 5 Hour Energy comes in. I have like 2 or 3 a day sometimes. And look, it works. It's the perfect pick-me-up, the perfect boost, and I find them at gas stations, Kroger's near me. Walk in, 17 different flavors, all of them pretty tasty. Buy on Amazon or at 5hourenergy.com, 5-hourenergy.com, or find them on Amazon with 5 Hour Energy. It's Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech. Level, the Tech strategy last year felt different, obviously. Number 1, number 2 recruiting class in the country in the transfer portal. This year, once again, top 10. Was it one and the same? Hey, let's do the exact same thing that helped us win in 2025, or did Tech take a different approach in its transfer portal class if you put a microscope on top of this?
It was similar. However, the one outlier is your biggest ticket item was just not one that you would have foreseen that you would have needed, except for another tough injury to Will Hammond. When that injury happens, you have to alter the course of exactly how this is going to play out, because you all of a sudden need a quarterback, the most expensive and the most important position on your team. But I think whether they'll end up being right or not, but they got exactly the guy that they wanted. They brought a Texas guy back home. I think they feel like that Brendan Sorsby will be a great fit. I think that the one thing that he does that Baron Morton couldn't do is he can run the ball. He's a running threat. They had a lot of red zone issues last year offensively, and this is a quarterback that now you must respect it. He averaged, or I guess I should say, he rushed for like 600 yards last year and like 9 touchdowns. So that was the biggest draw to them. Plus, he was a Texan, and I think there was some relationships there from his high school days with some of the staff, and that's just where it took them. But the prevailing thought of loading up on the trenches and spending their money on big people, specifically defensive line, that was the same as from a year ago. I don't think you're going to be able to add Romello Height and David Bailey every year. Those guys, I would say those are 10s. I think in this case with like Trey White and Adam Trick, I think they were all top portal guys. I think those are maybe closer to 8.5s, but I think that they beefed up their interior. They added, I think, 4 defensive tackles to add to A.J. Holmes, who was an All-American. And so that's where – and then they added what will probably be a starting offensive lineman in Jordan Church that was one of the best run blockers in the portal. And so that's where the expenses came from. That's where they felt like gives them an advantage. And so that's very similar to the year before, yes.
If you were to tell me 2 years ago that Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Arizona State were the top 3 teams in the Big 12 in the transfer portal, I'd have a lot of questions. I'd need a lot answered. But now, it made sense for Oklahoma State, the way they recruited the North Texas kids. Arizona State, now a contender after that championship. They want to play like it in the transfer portal. For Texas Tech, where does it put the Red Raiders in the Big 12 next season? As you give an outlook on the 16 teams in the conference, should they be the clear favorite?
I think they probably are the favorite. I think that BYU will be interesting. Now, obviously, they just took a hit with their team that they can't do anything about in Parker Kingston. I think Houston is going to be a sneaky good team with a lot back, and they did obviously very well in the portal. I do think I've known Eric Morris for a long time. I think Oklahoma State, it may take them a bit. I worry about them defensively, not offensively, but I obviously, what did they add? Like 50-something new players, and that's hard to mesh that together. But they have a head start because a lot of those guys are not new guys. They're just new to Stillwater. They're not new to Eric Morris and what he wants to get done. I think you mentioned Arizona, both the Arizona schools, I think could be interesting. But it has been interesting what Texas Tech did in the portal, because I think it's kind of, I don't know if I would term it that it's woken everybody up, but it's kind of, there's opportunity there. And I think it's obviously allowed some coaches and staffs to kind of rally support where they are to say, this is what it's going to take. And I think that there's more folks in the Big 12 starting to jump in at a higher level. And I think you're right. I mean, seeing Oklahoma State of all places, which, Mike Gundy was so against the new way of doing things, which is why there's obviously been a change and all that. Seeing them at the top of the portal rankings in the Big 12 is certainly interesting to see. But this is what it takes this day and age. But I think, had you not been able to add somebody like Sorsby, I think Sorsby is somebody that I think many will perceive as that gives you a difference maker at that position. Then I would wonder about if you were just hoping that Will Hammond would be able to come back. But I think Brendan Sorsby is like, that's what people feel. Say your defense isn't quite as good, but Brendan Sorsby should be a bit of a difference maker at quarterback, and maybe that makes up for some of that. So maybe you only win games by 15 points, on average instead of 20. I don't know. I mean, we don't know what we're going to get, but Sorsby was the difference. And if you're picking Texas Tech to win or contend for the Big 12 championship, I'd be willing to bet you that he's a major, major reason why.
Something a lot of Big 12 fans may be overlooking about Texas Tech is Jake Spavital, when he was the head coach at Texas State, was pretty clear he was not going to recruit Texas high school kids, which is the worst thing you can say as a head coach, football coach in Texas. McGuire's the opposite. I mean, he's a guy who, I think you've mentioned this, Coach Gary Patterson, before he took the USC job. We talked about it. He'll offer a kid out of high school $300,000 when Penn State will only offer $150,000 or Bama will only offer $150,000, hoping that kid stays in the Tech program and you grow him up in Lubbock. Is that the case right now? What does it look like, high school recruiting for Texas Tech in that class coming in?
Yeah, Drake, I think Joey has never wavered from the fact they're going to – and I think what they're doing now is they're trying to recruit more high-end players and maybe not as deep of a class. I mean, you're not seeing the 25-member recruiting class from a high school standpoint. That's why these portal classes have been larger than what Coach McGuire would have thought, because some of your – developmental guys that are been on campus for a year or two are going, okay, I don't see a path to playing time here. I'm out. So you lost 20 plus guys, but none of them had really played much. And maybe they'll go off and do great things. You had some of that last year. But I think that they've added a 5-star freshman in LaDamian Guyton that should factor in at defensive end. They've added Felix Ojo, who's a 5-star offensive tackle that may be a year or two away from. But yeah, they're definitely very much still invested in the high school aspect of it. Just maybe more higher end guys. I think that's the way that they view it too. Is that okay? Portal, we're spending on big people. High school recruiting, we in the state of Texas, you can get receivers and skill players and DBs. They're all over the place in this state. So if you're going to spend for these premium positions like edge or offensive tackle, maybe a wideout, maybe a quarterback, maybe this or that, but mainly it's going to be on these big folks, because right now Jalen Brewster, number one player in the country, is a defensive tackle from Cedar Hill, where Joey coached high school and won state championships. He's committed to them, and he plays defensive tackle. He's 300 plus, and so that's just their philosophy. Again, if you're going to spend big, it's going to be on big people. Mass kicks ass, as I think the head coach says.
I would rather have a 3-star from Canyon than a 3-star from anywhere in Alabama. Just your margin for error in that ranking system. You can have plenty of guys who slip through the cracks and end up being really good college football players. Texas Tech does a great job at it. Chris Level at Locked On Texas Tech. Find him every single day. Again, LockedOnTexasTech.supercast.com as well to become an everydayer. That's Chris Level. Drake Toll with you. This has been and always will be a crossover. Locked On Texas Tech and Dose Grande.